Miles Harrington moved silently through the metal corridors of Sector 17, his boots making almost no sound on the worn alloy floors. The hum of the space station was everywhere, ventilation, machinery, distant alarms, but he had learned to tune it out. His eyes scanned the shadows, sharp and alert. Somewhere in these forgotten halls, children waited. Alien children. Hungry. Afraid. Alone. He had promised them warmth, food, and a brief escape from the cold rules of the station. And he never broke a promise. The entrance to his hidden kitchen was a small maintenance hatch, almost invisible behind a stack of decommissioned cargo crates. Miles crouched, slid the hatch open and descended the narrow ladder. Below, the room smelled faintly of oil and dust, but he had transformed it into something else entirely. A faint glow from a single light panel illuminated makeshift counters, shelves lined with jars of preserved vegetables, and pots bubbling quietly over improvised heat panels. A chorus of soft whispers greeted him. He smiled. "Quiet, my friends," he said gently. "Dinner is almost ready." A group of 5 alien children, skin shimmering pale blue, eyes wide and wary, peeked from behind a stack of crates. They were small, no older than 7 or 8, but their eyes carried something most humans never see, the deep caution of beings who had learned danger from the moment they opened them. "Papa Fire," one of them said, a little girl named Lyra who had a crooked tooth and a laugh that seemed too bright for these gray corridors. They had given him that name because he brought warmth to the dark. Miles chuckled. "Yes, Lyra. Tonight you will have stew. Real stew. Not the scraps from the station corridors." He stirred the pot with care, adding dried tubers and a thin strip of protein he had traded for in the black market of the lower decks. His hands moved quickly but deliberately, a dance of precision born from years of cooking on Earth, where every ingredient mattered. But this was more than cooking, this was survival. Every extra bite he managed to create could mean the difference between life and death. The station had rules. Strict, unyielding rules. Humans were rare, often viewed as expendable labor or worse. Feeding alien children was illegal. The Empress's decrees left no space for compassion. Yet Miles worked within the shadows, risking everything for lives that could never repay him, lives he could not ignore. A sudden clatter echoed through the corridor above. His heart jumped. Patrols moved quietly through Sector 17, scanning for illegal activity. He froze for a moment, listening. The children pressed against the wall behind him, small bodies trembling. Lyra's hand found his, squeezing tightly. "Will they find us?" she whispered. "They might," Miles said softly, meeting her gaze. "But we are clever. And cleverness can beat fear." He crouched low, motioning for the others to follow him behind a stack of crates as the footsteps grew louder. His mind raced, calculating every possible escape route, every hiding place. This was no longer about food, it was about survival for all of them. The footsteps passed, slower now but close. Miles waited, counting seconds as if each one were a lifetime. When the sound faded, he exhaled and returned to the pot, stirring gently so as not to spill the precious stew. The children peeked out again, their trust in him unspoken but complete. Miles knew the weight of that trust. He carried it like armor, more protective than any weapon. He ladled the thick stew into small bowls, each portion carefully measured. Lyra reached for hers and hesitated, glancing at the shadows outside the hatch. "They might come back," she said quietly. "They might," Miles admitted. "But tonight we eat. And tonight we are safe here." He handed her the bowl. She sniffed it, then smiled, the faintest glow of happiness breaking through her fear. It was a fragile thing, hope, but it lived in their laughter and the careful bites they took. As the children ate, Miles cleaned the edges of the pots, his eyes never resting. Every shadow could hide danger. Every sound could be a threat. And yet, there was something beautiful in this moment. A human bringing life and warmth where the galaxy had left only cold metal and fear. Suddenly the hatch above shuddered. Miles froze. That sound was different, heavier. Not a patrol, not the usual scans. Something else, more official, more urgent. The air felt tighter, the lights flickered, and a distant hum of engines grew louder. The children looked up, wide-eyed. Miles knew, even before he heard the official announcement crackle through the station's loudspeakers, that this night was about to change everything. Someone powerful was coming. And hiding would not be enough this time. He swallowed hard and wiped his hands on a rag. "Get ready, my friends," he said quietly. "We have a visitor, someone we cannot ignore." The hum of the engines grew louder, shaking the walls. Miles felt the weight of the station above them, a weight that could crush or destroy. But he also felt the fire within himself, determination, courage, and an unshakable resolve to protect these children at all costs. Whatever came next, he would face it. And then the first shadow fell across the hatch, signaling the beginning of a storm far larger than any patrol Miles had faced before. Miles pressed himself against the wall, his chest tight as the vibration from the engines above shook the metal floor. The hum wasn't just loud, it was deliberate, measured like the heartbeat of a predator closing in. The children huddled closer, tiny bodies pressed against his legs, their eyes wide with fear. Lyra clutched his arm like it was the only thing holding her to the world. "Papa, fire. What's happening?" she whispered. "I don't know yet," Miles admitted, keeping his voice calm though his mind raced. Every second counted. Every choice could mean life or death. The shadows outside the hatch twisted as the light from the engines above shifted, revealing metallic shapes descending the corridor. Overseers. Or worse. He didn't know yet, and he had to be ready for both. He motioned for the children to follow him toward a row of stacked crates that led to a narrow ventilation shaft. "Stay quiet. Stay close," he murmured. Lyra nodded, but even as they crawled into the cramped metal passage, their small bodies shook. Miles's hands moved deftly, checking the hatch that sealed the shaft, ensuring it was secure. This wasn't just hiding, it was tactical retreat. Every inch of space had to be used to survival's advantage. Above, boots clanged against the floor. Metallic voices barked orders, though they were muffled by the thick walls. Miles listened, counting syllables, memorizing the pattern. They weren't random, they moved in squads, scanning in predictable loops. He had seen them before, but never in such numbers. They were looking for someone breaking station law, a human cooking for alien children. The law didn't care about morality, only compliance. Miles had broken it. He adjusted the position of the children so that Lyra was closest to him, shielding her small frame. "Tonight we survive," he whispered. The words were simple, but in them carried every ounce of his courage and resolve. The children were afraid, yes, but they trusted him implicitly. That trust was his anchor. Without it, they were nothing. With it, they could endure almost anything. The patrol passed the hatch. A sharp clanging sound echoed and Miles froze. A shadow lingered longer than expected. A heavy boot, a scanning device passing slowly over the metal floor. His pulse thumped in his ears. One wrong move, one sound, and the entire operation would be exposed. He shifted slightly, careful to keep the children still. Lyra squeezed his hand tightly, eyes wide but silent. Minutes stretched like hours. Miles counted in his head, silently, methodically, while the children huddled behind him. The smell of the stew from earlier, potatoes, tubers, and the faint trace of alien protein, still lingered in the room. It was both comforting and dangerous. Comforting because it reminded them that life continued, dangerous because any trace could betray them. Finally, the sounds retreated down the corridor, boots fading. Miles exhaled slowly. "They're gone, for now," he said, though his words carried no finality. "But we can't stay here forever." The ventilation shaft, dark and cramped, was not a permanent shelter, it was only a temporary shield. He needed a plan, something smarter than running and hiding. Survival meant more than fleeing, it meant preparation, intelligence, and courage under pressure. He led the children back to the kitchen. Their bowls of stew waited, still warm, though partially cooled by the long minutes of tension. "Eat quickly," Miles urged. "We'll need strength for what comes next." They ate, small bites at first, hesitant, still listening for the return of the patrols. Miles watched them closely, calculating every movement, every sound. A human's survival depended on awareness, on anticipating danger before it arrived. Even as they ate, a thought gnawed at him. Someone had reported him. He wasn't just an isolated human defying law. He had become a symbol, even without realizing it. A human who risked everything for alien children in the heart of an unforgiving station. That symbol would draw attention, and attention was dangerous. But it was also powerful. It meant he could inspire courage, not just fear. That thought steeled him. A sudden alarm rang through the station, sharp, urgent, impossible to ignore. Red lights flashed in the corridors, casting harsh shadows across walls and machinery. Miles's heart jumped. This was no ordinary patrol. This was station-wide. Every instinct screamed danger. The children froze, staring at the flashing lights. He knelt down, meeting their eyes. "Listen carefully," he said, his voice steady. "No matter what happens, you follow me. Trust me." The alarm grew louder, and with it, a metallic roar that vibrated through the walls. The station shuddered as if under siege. Miles realized what was coming. This wasn't just law enforcement. This was someone higher, someone with authority enough to command every level of the station. The Empress or her representatives. And they were coming for him. Miles's mind raced, thinking through contingencies. Hiding alone would no longer suffice. He would need courage, intelligence, and precise timing. The children would need to trust him completely, or none of them would survive. Every choice from this point onward could change the outcome of their lives forever. He glanced at Lyra, then at the others. Their fear was palpable, but so was their faith in him. That faith was both a weapon and a responsibility. If he failed, it wasn't just him at risk. It was the lives of the children who depended entirely on a human's courage and quick thinking. The corridor above quaked again, louder this time. Miles felt the weight of the approaching threat, heavy and inevitable. The kitchen, their temporary sanctuary, suddenly seemed fragile, exposed. He tightened his grip on Lyra's hand. "Get ready," he whispered. "They're coming. And we will face them, together." Outside, the first shadow fell across the hatch again, long and deliberate. Miles inhaled sharply. This was no patrol. This was the beginning of something far larger, far more dangerous. His heart pounded, but inside him burned a fire stronger than fear. He would not hide. He would not surrender. He would face what came next, and he would protect the children no matter the cost. The hatch began to move slowly. Miles braced himself, every muscle taut, every mind alert. The sound echoed through the kitchen, a harbinger of the storm to come. And in that tense, suspended moment he knew the rules of survival had just changed. The Empress's presence, or at least the force that represented her, was about to descend on Sector 17. And for the first time, Miles understood that his courage, his humanity, and his cunning would be tested like never before. Miles's heart hammered as the hatch above the kitchen rattled, a harsh metallic sound that sent shivers through the ventilation shafts. The hum of engines had grown into a roar, echoing through the station's corridors, shaking the walls of Sector 17. The children huddled close, their small bodies trembling. Lyra's wide blue eyes searched his face, silently asking the question he had no easy answer for. "Will we survive this?" Miles swallowed hard. "We will," he said, though even he felt the uncertainty pressing down. There was courage in humans, he reminded himself, but courage alone was not enough. He had to think, to act, to be clever. Every second of hesitation could mean the difference between life and death. Above, the hatch swung open slowly, revealing figures silhouetted against the harsh red warning lights. The patrols had been replaced by something larger, heavier. Miles's breath caught. The insignia on the armored uniforms gleamed faintly, a symbol he had only ever seen in restricted station files. Empress Virella's presence, or at least her envoys, had arrived. And they were looking for him. The children pressed closer. Miles crouched, whispering instructions. "Stay behind me. No noise. Keep your heads down." He moved them into the shadows, against the wall, hiding them from the first pair of envoys as they stepped into the room. Their scanners swept the floor, the walls, the air itself, but Miles's heart pounded, not from fear alone but from the weight of responsibility. One misstep, one detectable sign, and all of them could be lost. The envoys stopped, their attention drawn elsewhere by a sudden movement in the corridor. Miles seized the moment. He scanned the kitchen for escape routes. The ventilation shaft was still an option, but it led only to the maintenance tunnels. Narrow, twisting, and risky. A bold plan would be better, something audacious that might buy them time and change the odds. Miles's eyes fell on the feast he had prepared earlier. The bowls of stew, still warm and aromatic, filled the room with a scent that no machine could ignore. The alien children's laughter, their joy as they ate, was risky, but it was also a tool. He moved quickly, setting bowls on a low table near the hatch, arranging them with care. The envoys paused, scanning the kitchen. One of them, taller than the others and bearing a cloak with the Empress's crest, tilted his head as though sensing something unusual. Miles stepped forward, hands raised slightly in a gesture of peace, and spoke with calm confidence. "You are welcome to join us," he said, voice steady despite the pounding of his own heart. "The children, they are hungry and I am only trying to help." The taller envoy studied him. "Why risk your life for these aliens?" he demanded. Miles met the gaze without flinching. He could see the rigid code in their eyes. Duty, loyalty, obedience. But he also saw curiosity, a crack in their armor. Humans did not behave like this. Humans did not act without fear or reward. "Because no life should starve," Miles said simply. "Because courage isn't only about fighting. Sometimes it's about protecting the innocent when no one else will." His words hung in the air, heavy and resonant. A flicker of something passed over the envoy's face, disapproval, surprise, maybe even a faint trace of understanding. Miles seized the moment. "These children trust me," he continued, his voice firm. "And if you harm them, you will destroy more than law. You will destroy hope itself." The envoy's gaze shifted to the children, who peered at him from behind Miles's legs. Lyra smiled faintly, holding her bowl, her trust unshaken. Miles felt a surge of determination. He could not back down. He would not back down. Above, another sound echoed, a deep vibration of engines approaching. The Empress herself must be near. Miles knew that reasoning alone might not be enough. He had one shot, one chance to show the strength of human courage and ingenuity. And he would use it. He beckoned the children closer. "Listen carefully," he whispered. "When I signal, step forward together. Show them who you are. Not as prey but as beings with voices, with laughter, with lives that matter." Their small faces reflected fear and trust in equal measure. Miles's heart swelled with a mixture of pride and responsibility. He had trained them in secret for this moment without even realizing it. The courage to stand, the instinct to survive, the bravery to face something far larger than themselves. The hatch creaked open wider, and the light of the corridor spilled into the kitchen. Shadows stretched across the walls, and Miles felt the weight of every step, every heartbeat. The envoy's eyes scanned the room, tension coiled like a spring ready to snap. And then he saw it, the insignia of the Empress on the doorway beyond, unmistakable, shining with authority that could crush entire sectors. Miles took a deep breath, steadying himself. "Now," he whispered. He stepped forward, the children following, moving into the light not as frightened aliens but as a group united, as proof of what humanity could inspire. The aroma of the feast, the laughter of the children, the calm defiance in his eyes, it was a silent challenge, a statement of courage that no weapon could match. The envoys hesitated. The Empress's presence loomed, but Miles's gaze did not waver. He had no guarantee of survival, no assurance that mercy would follow. But he had something more powerful: intelligence, preparation, and unyielding human bravery. And sometimes that was enough to tilt the scales. A sudden alert echoed from the station's control systems. Another patrol was approaching, faster this time, sensors tuned to detect unauthorized activity. Miles's pulse quickened. The kitchen, his sanctuary, was about to become the stage for a confrontation that could determine life or death. He looked at the children one last time. "Stay close. Trust me. We will not fail," he said. Outside, the shadow of the Empress's flagship loomed over Sector 17, its engines humming with deadly precision. Inside, Miles's fire burned brighter than any star. The storm had arrived, and only human courage, cunning, and determination could see them through. Miles felt the weight of the room press down as the first envoy stepped fully inside. His mind raced, calculating every possibility, every angle. There was no turning back. The children were behind him, eyes wide, their small bodies trembling, yet trusting. Lyra clutched his arm, her fear evident but mixed with something braver: faith. That faith had to be honored. "Who are you to interfere with Imperial law?" the envoy demanded, voice sharp, carrying the authority of Empress Varela herself. Miles did not flinch. He had faced fear before, but this was a storm unlike any other. One human against the power of a galactic empire. Yet he stood straight, shoulders squared, voice calm but firm. "I am a cook," he said simply. "I feed the hungry. That is all." The envoy's eyes narrowed, disbelief flickering. "These children, they are under Imperial protection. You risk your life for them?" "Yes," Miles said, unwavering. "Because life is not defined by law but by what we do when no one else will act. Courage is not in obedience, it is in compassion even when it is dangerous." The envoy studied him, clearly debating whether to react with force or leave the human to his small, stubborn defiance. Miles could feel the tension in the room tighten like a wire ready to snap. He knew reasoning alone would not be enough. He had to act, and fast, to turn this confrontation into survival. He glanced at the bowls of stew he had prepared. The scent filled the kitchen, warm and rich, inviting. He had an idea. Perhaps audacious, perhaps foolish, but audacity was often the weapon of the underdog. He moved deliberately toward the table. "Would you like to see what I have made?" he asked, voice steady. The envoy hesitated, a flicker of curiosity crossing his features. Miles lifted a bowl, steam curling in the air. "This is earth stew, and I made enough for everyone in this room," he said. He gestured to the children. "They eat, they live, they grow. And yet they do so without harm to anyone. They are alive because of care, not fear. And care care is something even the strongest cannot command. The envoy's eyes softened slightly, a crack in the armor of rigid duty. Miles seized it. "You may punish me," he said, "but I will not stop feeding the hungry. I will not stop protecting innocence. And I will not betray the trust these children place in me, even if it costs me my life." The children, sensing the shift, began to step forward, small but determined. Lyra's eyes met Miles's. He gave her a small nod, a silent signal. "Show them who you are," he whispered. Together they moved into the open, their voices shy at first, but growing as the envoy watched. The children spoke words of greeting, of thanks, of laughter. They shared their stories, tiny moments of courage and survival. Each story was a small rebellion, a testament to what humans could inspire: hope, bravery, and defiance in the face of impossible odds. The envoy's gaze widened. He had expected fear, submission, perhaps even silence. Instead he saw life, vivid, alive, unbroken by the harsh rules of the Empire. Miles felt the surge of possibility. He had shown more than survival. He had shown the power of example, of human ingenuity, and of courage that did not rely on weapons but on heart and action. A sudden alarm cut through the station's hum. The Empress's flagship, massive and unyielding, hovered above Sector 17. Sensors flared. Reinforcements would arrive at any moment. Miles knew that this demonstration alone might not be enough. The stakes were still sky-high. But he had one more move, one more calculated risk. He clapped his hands lightly. "Come closer," he instructed, motioning to the children to surround the table. With precise movements, he began to serve the stew to the envoy, one careful bowl at a time. Each act was deliberate, showing generosity, skill, and control. The envoy's rigid posture softened further. Every gesture told a story that law could never enforce. Humans could be brave, clever, and honorable in ways the Empire had never anticipated. "Why do you care so much?" the envoy asked, almost softly. "Because life matters," Miles replied, voice calm, resolute. "Because courage is more than fighting, it is protecting, creating, nurturing, even when the odds are impossible." The children began to laugh softly, sharing their food with small gestures of friendship and joy. The envoy's expression shifted again, realization dawning. This human had not just survived. He had demonstrated something no weapon could achieve: influence, respect, inspiration. The alarms grew louder, the weight of the approaching forces pressing down, but Miles's fire did not dim. He could see it in the envoy's eyes: curiosity, awe, hesitation. Humans, small and fragile, had a way of turning impossible odds into acts of astonishing courage. The envoy stepped back, motioning for the others to pause. "The Empress will decide your fate," he said. "But your actions cannot be ignored." Miles held his ground, shoulders squared, heart steady. He had no illusions of safety, but he had demonstrated that humans could shine even in the darkest, most controlled spaces. Even here, in the shadow of an empire, courage and intelligence could bend perception, inspire change, and protect the innocent. Outside, the engines of the Empress's flagship vibrated the station's floors, a reminder of power and consequence. Inside, Miles and the children stood together, not as prey, but as witnesses to human resolve. Every move, every choice, every act of bravery had led to this moment: survival through ingenuity, courage, and moral clarity. And Miles knew, deep in his heart, that the real test was only beginning. The Empress herself would soon step onto this stage, and every lesson, every act of courage, every bit of human ingenuity would be tested against the galaxy's most formidable authority. He glanced at the children, their small hands gripping his. "No matter what happens next," he whispered, "we face it together." The shadows lengthened, the hatch groaned under pressure, and the distant lights of the flagship cast an ominous glow across the room. Miles tightened his grip on his courage, his mind already calculating the next move. The storm had arrived. And this time hiding would no longer be enough. The doors to the kitchen shuddered as the Empress's personal envoy stepped aside. Beyond them, a figure stood, taller than any Miles had imagined, clad in flowing ceremonial armor that shimmered like liquid metal. Empress Varela herself. Her eyes, cold and piercing, swept the room, taking in the human, the children, and the carefully arranged bowls of stew. Miles felt the weight of the galaxy press down on him, yet he did not flinch. "Human," her voice rang like steel against glass. "You have broken law, station code, and imperial decree." "Why?" Miles straightened, shoulders square, eyes unwavering. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the engines above. The children huddled behind him, small and vulnerable, but he drew strength from them. Because life matters, he said simply. Because courage is not in obedience. Courage is in protecting the helpless when no one else will. These children are alive because I chose to act. And I will not apologize for that. The Empress's gaze sharpened. You defy me and yet you are alive. Why should I not punish you? Miles glanced at the children, their trust and hope anchoring him. Because punishing me would not save a single life. Compassion, care and courage, these create strength far beyond fear. I'm human, yes, but that does not make me weak. It makes me capable of something you may have forgotten. Hope. For a moment, silence reigned. Even the engines seemed to hush. Then Miles did something audacious. He stepped forward, gesturing to the table. Please, Your Majesty. Taste the food. See for yourself the work, the care, the life I protect. Do not judge me by law alone. Judge by the lives I sustain. The Empress's eyes narrowed, but she allowed it. Miles moved with precise, calm movements, serving the stew into a small bowl and offering it to her. The children watched, barely breathing. Lyra stepped forward, shy but determined, her small hand brushing the table beside the Empress's. This is their feast, Miles explained. They eat because they have hope, because they are nurtured, because someone, one human, stood up for them in a galaxy that often forgets them. The Empress raised an eyebrow. And you expect me to be impressed by stew? Miles smiled faintly, undeterred. Not by the stew alone, Your Majesty. By what it represents. Resourcefulness. Ingenuity. Humanity. Even here, in the shadows of your empire, a human can change the outcome without weapons, without fleets, without commands. We survive with courage, intelligence, and heart. That is the power you see before you. For a moment, the Empress said nothing. The children shifted slightly, then laughed softly, the sound fragile yet real. Lyra's voice rang out, small but clear, "We're safe because of him." Miles stepped closer, letting the truth settle in the room. Your Majesty, these children were born into danger. They scavenged for scraps, hiding from patrols, surviving in fear. I gave them warmth, food, laughter, and hope. That is human courage. That is human power. You may control law, but you cannot control that fire. The Empress studied him, her expression unreadable. Then slowly she gestured to the envoys. Let it be recorded. This human, Miles Harrington, will not be punished. Sector 17 shall become a protected zone for alien children. Human intervention is sanctioned. And this kitchen, this act of courage, shall serve as a model for others. The room froze. The children stared, mouths open. Lyra ran forward, hugging Miles tightly. Tears streamed down her face. Papa Fire, she whispered. You saved us. Miles felt a surge of relief, but he did not relax. The galaxy was still vast, and the Empress's tolerance could shift at any moment. But in that instant, he had proven something deeper, that human courage, intelligence, and morality could bend even the most rigid rules of an empire. That even a single human, armed only with compassion and ingenuity, could protect lives and inspire change. Over the following hours, the Empress toured the kitchen, tasting the meals, asking questions, observing the children. Miles explained his methods, the ways he had managed resources, trained the children to trust and survive, and prepared for danger. Each explanation highlighted human adaptability, ingenuity, and resilience. The Empress's advisors took notes, clearly impressed by how one human had turned a hidden room into a sanctuary without breaking the balance of the station. By the time the Empress left Sector 17, her orders had changed the sector forever. Patrols were recalibrated to protect, not punish, the children. Human volunteers were welcomed to create safe zones. Miles's hidden kitchen became a beacon of hope, proof that humans could shine even in the harshest conditions. That night, after the engines of the flagship had faded into space, Miles sat with the children, sharing warm bowls of stew. Lyra leaned against his shoulder, exhausted but happy. Will they come back? She asked softly. They might, Miles said, brushing her hair back. But now we have shown them that courage and heart are stronger than fear. And as long as we act with care and intelligence, no one can take that from us. He looked around at the small faces illuminated by the soft light of the kitchen. Each child represented more than survival. They represented human ingenuity and morality, proving that even against impossible odds, one person could ignite change. Miles smiled, quietly proud. The galaxy was still dangerous, still vast and unyielding. But the spark of human courage he had lit in Sector 17 would ripple outward, reaching far beyond the kitchen walls. And for the first time in a long while, the children laughed freely, their lives brightened by a human who refused to let fear dictate fate. Outside, the station hummed as usual, indifferent and vast. But inside the hidden kitchen, warmth, laughter and courage burned brighter than any machinery. Miles had done more than feed children. He had shown that human spirit, unyielding, clever and moral, could defy impossible odds, even under the shadow of an empire. The Empress may command fleets, patrols and law, but she could not command hope. And that hope, seated by a single human, would grow stronger than anyone expected. Miles set down his spoon, watching the children eat and laugh, knowing that sometimes one person's courage could change a galaxy.